Armada news. Oh, hello there. What's going on, everybody? Whoa, Yoda's so happy because we got Armada news today. We're going to be talking about this new stuff. Are you happy, Yoda? Oh, he's super happy. All right, let's talk Armada news because we got some Armada news today, and it's not the Superstar Destroyer article. It's actually a Sector Fleet rules supplement talking about bigger and badder games, including team games, up to 8-player multiplayer games. I mean, there's a whole lot of interesting stuff in here. There's some that may not apply to you, like if you only are interested in playing 1v1 400-point games and never deviating from that. This doesn't do a whole lot for you. But I think for most of us with larger collections, we've always thought about doing some larger fleet point games. So this 4 pages of rules for this, and not all of it is like brand new breaking stuff. A lot of this is just a consolidation of like commonly held multiplayer rules and like slight stuff from the Corellian conflict, because that one already was kind of like standardized multiplayer rules, like team games basically. And they've kind of just taken some of that and consolidated it and updated it for the Superstar Destroyer, because that's going to be entering games, and we're going to have larger games now. And this is like the first ever ship that's over 400 points. So now you're like, all right, we got to do something about this. So that's kind of what this Sector Fleet rules is talking about. I'm going to break all this down. So, there's some good in here. There's not a whole lot of new information, but there's some good things that really do make sense. And I'm just really thrilled to see Armada articles. I'm really thrilled to see, higher point limits be like a standard point, format. And there's like margin of victory allocations for tournament points for all of this as well. So we're going to talk about all of that. If you are new here, I do want to remind you guys there is still time to enter to win the giveaway for a Star Wars Force FX lightsaber in the form of an Amazon gift card. All you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment. Let me know what size game you plan on playing. Are you excited about these rules? Is this going to change your games? I think it's awesome. I think there's something in here for just about everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So first thing is there's new points, right? So they're talking about 600-point games, 800-point games, 1,000-point games, and 1,200-point games. Now, they obviously you can play whatever size point games you want, but there are a couple of officially licensed game points, and there's some different point totals. There's some differences between whichever type of point system you're going to play at. For example, like 600 and 800 points, not a whole lot of changes that are going to be happening in the 600 and 800 point games. But if you are going ahead and using like 1,000 or 1,200 points, one of the first differences that you're going to notice for any game at that level is you're going to expand the setup area. You're going to use the expanded setup area, and that's actually going to include only a little bit more space on the sides. So normally you can only go out to distance 3 from your edge, and then you have to be within 5 from the sides. And this is actually changing that 5 down to a 3, so you actually have a little bit wider area that you can deploy in, which makes sense because, dude, if you're running a whole bunch of small ships, you're not going to have room to fit 1,200 points of ships. So you need a little more room. Granted, you could probably fit it, but at a certain point, it starts to be like, okay, it's obvious I have to have everybody just, I have to play Tetris to fit them all in here. And part of the mystique of this game during setup is like, all right, you don't know exactly where I'm going to set up. So by expanding the setup area a little bit, it gives those larger fleets a little bit more flexibility and maneuverability, and you get a little bit more choice during setup. So that is good. And granted, I've already house ruled stuff like that. I've done it where you just have all your entire edge to set up in, but it's good to see it actually officially sanctioned, because now we're all in the same sheet of music. What you don't want is you don't want to get used to playing like 1,000-point games, and then you go play somebody else someday and they're like, no, I'm not cool with that. That's not okay. Like, you want to make sure you have standardized rules, even for like these larger games. And again, you can house rule it however you want. If you want to play 2,000-point game and have custom setup areas, you can totally do that. But this is standardizing, up to 1,200-point games. And I think it's great. I really do. Another thing that there's different margin of victory, because obviously, in a 1,200-point game, it's not going to be the same balance and weight as a 400-point game. So it'll be a 6-5 if you're within 0 to 99-point margin of victory. 100 to 219 is 7-4. 220 to 539 is 8-3. 360 to 499 is 9-2, and 500 points or more is a 10-1. So big difference there versus only a 400-point game. So the tournament points is updated, and then granted, I don't expect there to be many tournament games of that like 1,000 or 1,200 point tournaments. But you could do that now, and now like that's one of the values of having it officially ranked or officially licensed and approved by organized play and just by FFG in general. So if you do want to run maybe a 2-round 1,200 point tournament, it's probably gonna take all day, but you could totally do that. And maybe if you have a community of people that are used to playing larger fleet games, they'll run a little bit faster if everybody's fielding a Superstar Destroyer or two. I mean, in theory, now. Brooks from FFG is talking about this in the article where they link to these rules. And one of the things that they're talking about is in like a lot of the games where these were tested, it's the idea that a Superstar Destroyer is going to be the centerpiece with a couple of ISDs surrounding it and, a couple of smaller support craft and a few squadrons and a rebel fleet of similar size. That's kind of the idea. And I think that would look beautiful on your tabletop. But, I mean, if I can run 1,200 points, I could run 2 Superstar Destroyers. I mean, somebody's gonna do it, right? I mean, somebody's gonna do it. I'll probably do it. And there's no real limit to how many Superstar. And you could have. I mean, you could probably fit like 3 or 4. I think it would be like insanity. That would be insanity. Would that be insanity? Maybe it would be insanity. Let me know if you think that would be insane. How many Superstar Destroyers is too many? But yes. So there's a couple of things like. In in those higher point games, you're raised up to 3 flotillas you can have. So that's one of the things that's actually important. And again, that's only in a one-on-one game. There are different rules for how many people you have on your team. But also in these larger games for sector fleet games, you're actually going to be limited to 1/4 of your total fleet points for squadrons as opposed to the normal 1/3. And they're trying to, because let's face it, squadrons can slow the game down, and when I have done larger games, it's been like a mutual agreement. Hey, let's not push it to a full 1/3 of squadrons. Let's try to keep it, somewhere around 100 to 200 points or so. So in a 1,200 point game, you could, in theory, I guess you could have 300 points of squadrons. I don't think I would really want to do that though. I think that would slow the game down such that it wouldn't really be that fun anymore. Because you'd be playing for like 3 or 4 hours and you'd only be on turn 2, or in theory, that could happen. So I like the idea of kind of lowering the squadron point for games because you're still going to get more points for squadrons. I mean, 300 points for squadrons is double what you get in a normal game. So you're still getting a lot more room for squadrons, but you just also get more room for ships because this game should be more about the ships than the squadrons anyway. Obviously, squadrons are an important part of Armada, but they also happen to take up way too much time than they're worth, I think, especially with people trying to measure that, I got him just in distance 1 of this guy, but not in distance 1 of that guy. It's like, is it really worth it at that point? Now, game length, they talk about, there's a couple of like things in this rules document that are talking about, look, FYI, game length is going to be like, you may be playing like 5 hours at a game like this, so plan accordingly. And those are nice. It's nice that they made those observations. So I kind of dig that. I dig it. Let's talk multiplayer. So, there's some suggestions for like if you're playing 4 players, like, and the multiplayer is team games, all right? So it's not really like multiplayer, like 8-player free for all. If you want to do that, you're still gonna have to house rule it. There's just no way. Maybe we can use like Deep Space Nine and everybody's trying to score hits on the station or something like that. We could always house rule multiplayer, like true multiplayer, but team-based multiplayer is kind of refined a little bit here, and it's very close to how it was in the Corellian conflict. So one of the things there, like they give you some outlines. If you're playing a 4-player, if you're at 600 points, how many points per team? Like 300 points per person. 800 points is 400 points per person. 1,000 points is 500 points per person, and then you use the extended setup where you have if you're 1,000 or more, again, you got the only 3 distance on the side, so you have more room. And then 1,200, 600 per person. 6-player game, they break down that. An 8-player game, and for like an 8-player game, there's or a 6 or 8. There's also certain things like in a 4-player game, you're still restricted to 2 flotillas per fleet, and a 6 or 8 is only 1 flotilla per fleet. So there's certain rules like there just to keep there from being like too many flotillas and really slowing down the activations. But they also point out that those activations aren't that big of a deal. Like, activations are important, but like first player advantage and certain things that are in like a standard 400 point game of Armada don't really matter quite so much in a giant game of of Armada, and because like, all right, we got 30 ships on here. It doesn't really matter which one you do first, because there's like, and this has certainly been the case for me in a lot of my games, is a lot of those really crowded boards. There's something that's important on this side of the board that would be nice to go first there, but there's also something that'd be nice to go first here, and something that'd be nice to go first over there. So like first player is not even close to as big of a deal. Whereas in a 400-point game, a lot of it all boils down to like a single kind of area where we're fighting over control over an objective or an area or something like that. So the first player advantage isn't nearly as big of a deal, and as a result, certain things are going to change. So there's some interesting like clarifications. One thing that's important with the team though is you're going to have a Grand Admiral, and the Grand Admiral is going to be like the person who makes decisions when it's not obvious. The person that is basically like when it's our turn to go, the Grand Admiral is going to say, all right, Joe and Mary, you're on my team. All right, when it's our turn, I'm going to pick one of the three of us to go. And then, then you get to do your one activation. So the Grand Admiral kind of makes decisions. But I think that's just there to formalize it, because let's be honest, I think you're going to be talking. So you're going to probably agree ahead of time. But I think it's a cool idea to have the Grand Admiral, because before we all get started, you can be like, look, or do we want to do like the strict Grand Admiral thing? Because that could speed up the game. You can be like, all right, no, you go, final answer, boom. And like, even if you realize, that wasn't the best thing, you said it, it's done. No more thing. That could be, you can't micromanage. You can't tell them what to activate. You can't tell them what ship, or if they have to do a ship or a squadron. You don't set their dials or anything like that. But you're just making the decision to kind of speed it up, because what happens, you get analysis paralysis, right? You're sitting there looking at like, oh, we got so much stuff. Should we have this MC30 go first? Oh no, wait, we're gonna lose our double Akbar slash if we do that, So all of that, so that basically the Grand Admiral kind of dictates a lot of that stuff. So that's important. But there's a couple of other real interesting rules, like, all right, when something says your opponent. It says when a game effect refers to your opponent, treat it as referring to any player on the opposing team that satisfies the effect's other conditions. If it does not resolve the situation, treat it as the Grand Admiral. And whenever a team would resolve an effect, if it's not clear which player on the team would resolve that effect, the Grand Admiral of that team resolves that effect. So, it's just good to have things like that. But there's also some other special abilities that they've clarified that make a lot of sense, like your admiral or your commander, right? You're like Akbar. I'm going to use Akbar as the example here. Akbar is only going to affect my ships and my fleet. On our whole team, if we're doing 3v3, for example, you could even have 4v4 is what they go. They go that far in here. If we're doing 3v3, my fleet is my fleet. It's basically a joint fleet. It's actually 3 fleets combined to form one giant armada. So Akbar is only going to affect my ships. It's not going to affect any of my allied ships. That's an important distinction. However, other effects that affect friendly ships are going to affect them. And this is one way so what I used to do in all of my homebrew group games is I would say anything that's range-based, like Torin Far, near friendly ships within a certain range, that could be universal. But anything that is global, like Akbar, is only my fleet. They've changed that here to where it's only your commander's stuff is restricted to only your fleet. Your other global or your other friendly stuff, so like fleet commands, affects your entire fleet. So that's actually really cool, because that's going to affect fleet building. Like maybe we're getting ready to play a big game this coming weekend and say, hey, I'm going to be the support fleet. I'm going to have, the Super Star Destroyer with like 4 fleet commands. So I'm going to be doing all 4 of them. And that is really cool. And that also makes me wonder, what if we have, you can't have 2 instances of Intensify Firepower because it's unique. So we couldn't actually have 2 of those. And that's one of the things also you have to kind of work out is who's running uniques, because you can't have duplicate uniques. So in other words, you can't have 2 versions of Intensify Firepower. So if I'm running Intensify Firepower, you can't also run it. So if somebody is going to be running that Super Star Destroyer with like, the all 4, that variant, that executor, then everybody else is free. So you don't need to run Simoons to get to get that. And that just basically gives support a little bit more, a little more oomph to it. So that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. But the biggest thing is the assign targets phase. And this one is really important. So after setup, each player whose commander does not have a friendly effect must choose one opponent. Okay? The enemy effect of that commander only resolves against enemy ships or squadrons controlled by the chosen opponent. So things like Dodana, because think about it, Dodana would be like completely wrecked. You would just completely wreck face in a big multiplayer game if that rule wasn't there. Because everybody who lands on an asteroid, oh, you landed on an asteroid, Dodana, boom, boom, boom. Oh, he attacked you, but my Dodana, boom. So it's to help prevent, because these commanders, Palpatine, enemies, blah, blah, if you use a brace, it's gone. Well, you know what? That's only balanced against one player. So that's just a good way. It makes sense, right? I'm there, and then you can have micro goals too. Like, I just want to eliminate Joey on the other side. I just want to eliminate Admiral Joey. And, even if our team loses, I still, I still eliminated Admiral Joey. So there's things like that that are important. Another interesting thing that I thought was pretty cool about this is that the squadron command. If I resolve a squadron command, I can actually activate allied squadrons if they're within range, as long as that player agrees. So that's another really cool aspect of all of this. There's a whole lot more. So I will put a link to the article, and that has also a link to the sector fleet rules. It's very, very cool. And, you'll notice that big Fantasy Flight and Disney logo on the back. I wonder if, for a lot of this stuff, if this all has to go through approval too. And maybe that's one of the reasons why it takes so long to get news, especially things like FAQs and rules documents, because, a PDF has to have every line analyzed, I'm sure, by licensing. And so, that might have been part of the delay. This is really cool. I'm thrilled that we got news that it wasn't the Super Star Destroyer's actual spoiler article. So there's still more, because I still have questions about the Super Star Destroyer. I still have a lot of questions that I think I would love to have answered. And FFG, if you're listening, let's get some answers to some of them questions that are out there. I've already sent you guys some, but we'll see. Hopefully those answers will be coming soon. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you are as excited as I am, let me know. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to check out Crabbok.com. You can hop in my Discord. Say hi. You can hop in the Armada Discord. Say hi to everybody over there. I have links to just about all the FFG games that I cover to their respective Discords, because there's actually a lot of Discords out there now. I have links to all of those in my Discord as well, so you can get to them. Legion, X-Wing, Keyforge. There's Discords for all of those. So, it's just a great way to interact with those communities, especially if you're looking to get advice from other players, ask questions. I get a lot of people asking me questions. I can't really respond to all of them individually. I do generally make it a point to respond to ones that come through on Patreon, though. So big thanks to my patrons as well. Thank you guys so much. You definitely help make all of this possible. All right, guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a great day.